For those of you that may be guests with us, once again, welcome. But here at Trinity, before we have our sermon, we have what's called a Worldview segment. And the reason we do a Worldview segment is we believe that we exist as a spiritual crossroads, an intersection, if you will, where moral, cultural, social, political, economic issues collide with biblical truth. Now, we base this on a verse of scripture out of the Old Testament, 1 Chronicles 12:32, where it says, the sons of Issachar had wisdom regarding the times in which they lived, and they knew what they should do. We believe two things for Christians today. We need to be able to discern the times in which we live for two reasons. Number one, you need to be informed so that you can know how to pray, so that you could, number two, be empowered to act, to do something. In Acts chapter 2, verse 40, Peter said, save yourselves from this wicked, perverse generation. And not only should we save ourselves, but in the process, save others. And as times get tougher, sermons can't keep getting weaker. We live in a world filled with lies, and we must deal in the truth. I want to speak about what we've seen in recent weeks with the anti-Israeli protest encampments that have emerged over 100 college campuses nationwide, spotlighting the pro-Palestinian movement here in our own country. It's important to note that this movement extends beyond the educational institutions. Since October 7th of 2023, more than 10,000 pro-Palestinian protests have been documented across the country, with approximately 70% occurring outside of college campuses. It speaks to the breadth and the influence of this movement. Now, this should be alarming from the standpoint that as Americans here in the United States of America, we are to participate in a collective national identity and a cultural unity. Our motto here in the United States of America, and for all other citizens that come from other countries around the world and then pledge allegiance to America, we are still one nation under God. That's our motto. And here's what's ironic. We're one nation under God, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the God that we serve. Now, there's been a passive response to these protests on university campuses, which has emboldened the protesters. It's intensified their actions, which include property damage, physical assaults on students, building occupations, and even detaining university staff. These protests have consistently featured chants. They're chanting support for Hamas, the Houthis, which is another terrorist group from out of Yemen, Iran, and they're chanting and asking for further attacks against Israel. And they're trying to stir up other terrorist-related movements, once again, to attack the nation of Israel. There have been 8,600 arrests recorded at these pro-Palestinian events since October 7th. And there has been at least, out of 128 of these events, these protests, there's been property damage with 13 police officers that have been injured. Now, Israel, once again, is not fighting the Palestinians. This is not a war against the Palestinians. This is a war against Hamas, which is a terrorist organization which occupies Palestine, which is the de facto government since 2007. And here are three important thoughts that we need to be reminded of. Israel has a right to self-defense. Israel, as a sovereign nation, like any sovereign nation, has a right to defend itself from external threats. This includes actions taken in response to the attacks from Hamas on October the 7th. Just like any other nation has that sovereign right, so does Israel. Number two, there's always complexity and conflict of management when it comes to war. Those of you that are veterans, that have served in battle, it's what's called the fog of war. And as soon as the first shot is fired, nothing goes according to plan. So even though Israel is trying to minimize civilian casualties, this is urban warfare. These terrorists operate within these urban communities and neighborhoods. They use innocent men, women, and children and hostages as human shields in their defense against Israel trying to root out these terrorists. And the third thought is this. There is a legal and ethical framework that Israel operates within. These legal, judicial oversight, they have to adhere to international laws of warfare. And despite facing an adversary that does not engage in conventional warfare, They are doing the best they can to minimize civilian casualties. It's with great regret that President Biden recently, his administration, withheld certain munitions, certain weapons that are able to pinpoint specifically the location of their detonation, trying to influence a ceasefire. That is the wrong step that we're taking as a nation. Israel is not giving up until they complete the mission, and the reason there is so much upheaval right now is because they are very close to finishing the mission and rooting out the very last Hamas terrorist that is living there in Palestine. We need to continue to pray and support Israel in their endeavor. God made a promise a long time ago. He said in the word, I will bless those who bless Israel. I will curse those who curse Israel. And once again, if we as a nation want to continue to live under the blessing of God, we need to stand with Israel.